Hi and welcome back to my channel for all things creative. And for this video I'm testing out a smart curing machine that claims to be able to cure resin in just 2 hours. Now I'm sure you've seen this on other channels being reviewed, so when the company offered to send me the machine to test out, at first I had to kind of think about it and work out whether it was even possible to cure ordinary resin in just 2 hours, but I am a sucker for gadgets, so I agreed. And I think the most important thing before investing in these type of gadgets is just to be aware of your expectations. Mine was simple enough. All I wanted to be able to do was just unmold my projects, put them to the side to fully cure, and then be able to reuse the same molds and free my workspace. So I really am hoping this will work. It would definitely save me some time since I cannot unmold any resin until at least 12 hours have passed. So I don't really like doing reviews. And I'm just going to film this as a usual process video, and I'm going to try out some resin pieces that I need to make and see if it works. So this is the newer version with the appropriate plug outlet for 220 volts for France. The cable isn't very long, so I've had to use an extension plug propped up on the table to plug it in. It came with detailed instructions in a few languages and seems simple enough to use. There are two settings. The button on the left is marked AI for automatic input, and the one on the right is for manual adjustments, where you can set your own time and temperature. And so my machine is for France. It's in centigrade and it goes up from 35 to 70 degrees and then up to 120 minutes of timer. After this time, it does a kind of a cool down of 3 minutes before it stops automatically. So it comes with 3 trays made from plastics with holes in the center for airflow, and they are slightly adjustable by turning the tray clockwise. This makes it a little taller, but not that much. And the vent in the middle is where the air flows through, so it's probably best not to block this with molds. So I'm trying some molds out that fit into the tray, but it seems to me that shallow molds are best. Although I did manage to get the pink mold to fit by turning the shelf, and the small white mold was too tall to fit, so I won't be using that one. And you need the lid to keep the air in the machine, so although the instructions say you can put taller molds on the top without the lid, but I'll have to test that out for another time. As with all pour art, level your table before using. I'm also leveling the top and it matches, so both the machine and the table are level. You're supposed to pour inside the trays, which makes sense so that it doesn't spill everywhere if you transfer the mold by hand, but I find pouring resin can be messy. So to avoid spills on the trays, I came up with this little trick of adding a sheet of paper underneath the mold, pouring, and then removing the paper. And if any spills happen, they will be on the paper and not in the machine. But do test this out first to make sure that the paper slides off well. Newer molds may stick to the paper. And I'm also trying to avoid putting any molds in the middle of the shelves, as it has a little raised lip and I don't want my molds to be bent. It does say to use a 1:1 epoxy resin, not UV resin, and when the time is up the machine will run for 2 minutes cool down, and then it says to let the resin sit for about 15 to 30 minutes. As this requires a 1:1 resin, I'm using craft resin, and I'm going to prepare some and then start pouring. I'm adding a little black glitter to this thinner mould, and the idea is to fill the inlay of this mould, and then hopefully in 2 hours or so I can top it up with more resin in another colour. Now this would save me a lot of time until waiting the next day, so I hope that this works. The heart mould is a little thicker, so I am testing this out to see if it cures, and now I wanted to test out top coating a piece with clear resin, which I do a lot. I'm not convinced these shells are totally flat. They curve a little bit in the middle when you push down on them, but we'll see. So starting the machine is easy, plug it in, and I'm going for the easier option and using the automatic setting. This setting cures the resin for 90 minutes at the lowest temperature and then the remainder at the maximum temperature. Click once and it starts, and it's really important to ventilate your room very well whilst it's working. It heats up a lot and the fumes from the resin do seep out. And luckily my workspace is under a window, so I always have it open. And also, if you stay in the room whilst it's on, please wear an appropriate mask as well. So I left it for a full 2.5 hours, and when I took the lid off, the machine was really hot and all my pieces were very hot to the touch. And just be wary of this. It didn't burn my hand, but the pieces and the molds were very hot. Initially, when I removed the molds, they were still slightly soft, but my expectations for this machine was to be able to unmold my pieces after 2 hours and then be able to reuse the molds and also clear up my workspace to use for something else. And usually I would have to wait until the next morning to do this. So I was pleasantly surprised that they were as hard as they were. And if you watch on, I have a little tip to speed the curing a little bit further. So they're still bendable, but touching the top of this top-coated resin piece, it's cured, it's not sticky. So this would mean I could place it on a shelf and just let it fully cure. Now, resin usually needs a couple of days to fully harden and then up to 3 weeks to fully cure. So this machine cuts out a good 9 hours of the initial curing time. So I'm now unmolding this napkin ring, and I was happy that I was able to unmold it no problem. No sticky patches. It was still bendable because it's warm to the touch. But the heart mold, the thickest of the molds here, was cured, and the napkin rings came out of the mold no problem. And just to make sure you place them on a flat surface until they're fully cured. So this coaster was cured, only slightly bendy, but very hard to the touch. And now for the top coats. I was worried about the resin sliding to one side of the coaster, and it did. And I'm not sure if it's because I didn't put enough resin on the top, or maybe I placed it on the wrong side of the shelf. So I'm going to have to experiment with that. And I did have a few spills, but they came off easily from the shelf and on the bottom of the machine. However, this coaster with the added top coat was not bad. The resin top coat slightly pulled to one corner, but overall nice, no marks, no blush and no dust particles. So I wanted to see how this would demold, so I changed my mind about adding another layer and I unmolded as usual. And with thinner castings in general, the resin is always very bendy, but it wasn't sticky, so I could unmold easily. So all in all, my expectations were met. I can unmold these no problem without any sticky spots, but to speed up the process, fill a tub of cold water, the coldest you can get, add a couple of ice cubes if necessary, and let these sit in here for about 10 minutes or so. The cold water just cooled down all of the hot resin and the coasters, and they were much less bendy. And as you can hear, nice and cured. So they're still not fully cured, but I wasn't expecting this machine to do that. But I definitely recommend this machine for smaller molds, maybe if you're a jewellery maker or you make pop sockets, etc. Deeper ones such as crystal clusters might need twice the time indicated because they're a little thick. But for my purposes, I like this gadget and it will definitely come in useful for future projects. So thanks for watching. I hope this was useful to you. It does always help to watch a couple of demonstrations before spending more money on crafting. Have a great week, everyone, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.